Among the myriad questions humanity ceaselessly poses about the cosmos, one still reverberates right here on our own planet. What lies at the deepest point? What hides beneath the crust of limits we thought we had reached? This question is not merely curiosity. It's an inherent invitation, urging us to transcend what we know, to confront what we cannot imagine. Deep beneath the gentle waves of the Pacific Ocean, where sunlight never reaches, another world exists. A realm shaped by eternal darkness, bone-chilling cold, and a pressure that can crush everything into oblivion. For centuries, it was a blank space on our map of knowledge, an abyss where we believed life was impossible. But then, in 1873, a first ripple broke that infinite silence. Aboard the HMS Challenger of the British Royal Navy, a historic mission was underway, mapping the ocean floor. Hundreds of sounding lines were deployed in every harsh weather condition, from scorching heat to freezing waters. They lowered a heavy lead weight until it hit the bottom, then painstakingly pulled up every foot of wet, heavy cable. The initial picture revealed a flat, muddy, silty surface, about 10,000 to 13,000 feet deep. But on one fateful day, about 1,200 miles east of the Philippines, the lead weight didn't touch bottom at 10,000 feet, nor at 13,000 feet. It kept sinking, deeper still. More cable was spliced on, and it continued its descent. We can only imagine their feeling as they watched the line vanish into the dark abyss, just beneath the thin wooden hull of their ship. In those days, voyages on the high seas were a struggle for survival. Sailors put their faith in legends and fears of colossal creatures rising from the depths, devouring entire ships with grotesque tentacles. For us today, that seems far-fetched. But for them, with their lack of understanding of these depths, that fear was real, a haunting presence right beneath their feet. Finally, the lead touched bottom. Over 26,000 feet. They had found the Mariana Trench, a geological wound on the surface of our planet. And had they moved slightly further west, they would have found the Challenger Deep, the absolute deepest point on Earth, where the greatest pressure exists, nearly 36,200 feet, or almost 7 miles. Mount Everest, over 29,000 feet tall, would completely disappear into that hole, with another 6,500 feet of depth still remaining. The Mariana Trench, a winding valley over 1,500 miles long, nearly 43 miles wide. The Challenger Deep alone, a small section of the trench, could swallow 5 Grand Canyons, an unimaginable scale, and a mystery that urges us to find answers. Initially, this craving was driven by a primal romanticism, a belief in the wonders we had yet to see. With very little information, early hypotheses about life in the Mariana Trench often took on mythical tones. People envisioned colossal creatures, monsters from the abyss, adapted by becoming larger and more terrifying to survive in that extreme environment. It was a time when belief in marvels was greater than the ability to prove them scientifically. Every story of a strange silhouette flitting past a weak lens was elevated into evidence of an unknown world. The iconic evidence for this romantic phase came in 1960. Don Walsh of the U.S. Navy and Jacques Picard, a Swiss oceanographer, made the most dangerous dive in history at the time. In the bathyscaphe Trieste, a small pressure sphere, they reached the Challenger Deep, and at nearly 36,000 feet, they saw a creature, a fish resembling a sole, swimming over the sediment. It was a groundbreaking moment, living proof that life not only existed, but thrived in what was considered the deadliest place. This discovery reinforced the belief in the extraordinary nature of the deep ocean. It wasn't just a fish. It was a symbol of life's resilience, a tangible form for the legends of the abyss. It affirmed that our Earth still held countless unsolved mysteries, and human imagination, however rich, could not compare to nature's creativity. However, science does not stop at romanticism. With every discovery, the rise of logic and sharp analysis is inevitable. Scientists began to question, could an ordinary fish survive under such terrifying pressure? The biology and physics of life had to be rigorously re-examined. They began to look at the Earth's own structure. The Mariana Trench is not a random hole. It is a colossal scar of a grand geological process. Our planet's surface is made up of gigantic tectonic plates floating on molten magma. In the Atlantic, plates are pulling apart, creating new ocean floor. But in the Pacific, the story is one of destruction. The Pacific plate is constantly being born, flowing out like a geological conveyor belt, but it is also shrinking. And this is the crux: subduction. The Pacific plate, older and denser, is forced to sink beneath the younger, lighter Philippine plate. It returns to the magma that created it. This is the planet's largest material recycling process, simultaneously creating earthquakes, volcanoes of the Ring of Fire, and deep ocean trenches. The Mariana Trench is a crack, a destructive flow, not an arbitrary hole. With new understandings of geology and extremophile biology, the soul-like fish hypothesis of Walsh and Pickard began to waver. Scientists, with later analyses, proposed a different explanation, less romantic, but far more plausible. The creature they saw was very likely not an ordinary fish. It was more likely a sea cucumber, a soft-bodied, invertebrate creature specially adapted to withstand such immense pressure. This was a scientific shock, a necessary disillusionment. It reminded us of the formidable challenges of exploring the deep. The pressure in Mariana doesn't just destroy organisms. It's an enemy of our most sophisticated equipment. In 2014, the unmanned submersible Nereus was crushed during a dive into the Kermadec Trench. Even military submarines can only dive safely to about 5,000 feet. Mariana not only holds mysteries, it is also a warning. But disillusionment is not failure. It's the beginning of a revolution. As old myths vanished, a new era of scientific exploration emerged, driven by modern technology. The hunt no longer takes place with hazy binoculars, but with test tubes, complex algorithms, and sophisticated autonomous underwater vehicles. Scientists began to classify the ocean into ecological zones, each with its own characteristics and ecosystems. From the sunlit zone, epipelagic zone, where light abounds and photosynthesis produces half the oxygen we breathe, to the twilight zone, mesopelagic zone, where light fades and the first bioluminescent flashes appear, home to the bristlemouth, the most abundant vertebrate on the planet. Then we plunge into the midnight zone, bathapelagic zone, a realm of eternal darkness. Temperatures remain stable at 39 degrees Fahrenheit. Here, creatures have adapted in unimaginable ways. Lanternfish use light as bait. Giant squid, with the largest eyes on the planet, remain a great mystery. And the phenomenon of deep-sea gigantism transforms small surface creatures into colossal monsters in the abyss, a survival strategy in a food-scarce environment. And finally, we reach the Hadal Zone, the realm of Hades, where the deepest ocean trenches exist. Near freezing temperatures, unimaginable pressure. Life is sustained by chemosynthesis of bacteria using toxic gases from mud volcanoes and hydrothermal vents on the seafloor. Here, we find extremophiles, giant amphipods over a foot long, transparent sea cucumbers with leg-like tentacles, the Mariana snailfish. the deepest known fish, and xenophyophores, giant single-celled organisms the size of a soccer ball. These modern methods have allowed us not just to probe, but to see more clearly into this world. In 2012, James Cameron made the first solo dive into the Challenger Deep. Since then, 20 more dives have been made, bringing the number of people who have been down here to exceed those who have been to the moon. But even with all this technology, we have only just scratched the surface. Only about 400 species have been identified in the global Hadal zone. An astonishingly small number, far fewer than the thousands of species in a normal freshwater lake. Unmanned submersibles carrying cameras and bait sometimes only attract a few amphipods or sea cucumbers. It's like trying to understand the Grand Canyon by dropping a camera into the same spot a few times at night, with a tiny light, and then finding a spider or a few ants. It only adds to the question, what are we missing? The journey of exploring the Mariana Trench is not just about what we find down there. It is also a mirror reflecting ourselves. We have sent people to the moon, sent probes to Mars, Saturn, even Neptune at the edge of the solar system. So why do we still know so little about an area that covers more than half of our own planet? The value of mysteries does not lie in finding ultimate answers. Rather, it lies in the way they compel us to keep searching, to keep asking questions, and force us to acknowledge our humility before the vastness of the universe. The creatures living in Mariana, the cells that can survive under unimaginable pressure, are key to understanding life at its most extreme limits, opening the door to new medical treatments, unprecedented scientific breakthroughs. The Mariana Trench still holds countless secrets. It is the last unexplored frontier on our planet. It challenges us, urges us, and reminds us that, even in the deepest shadows, there is always the light of discovery. And only when we dare to face these abysses do we truly begin to understand ourselves and the wondrous planet we call home. The pressure there is more than 1,000 times surface pressure. It's equivalent to placing a 1-ton truck on your thumb. It's enough to destroy the sturdiest equipment, enough to disintegrate the tiniest cells that make up life.